Okay. So we're recording, so I guess I have to be professional now and talk. All right, we're talking about propeller governors, also known as prop governors for short. And we finished yesterday talking about flyweights. Flyweights, if they're doing this, it's in a underspeed, and if it's this, it's overspeed, and if it's this, it's field goal. I don't know. So all right. So let's talk about and what these flyweights are doing is they are lifting and dropping a pilot valve. So let's talk about the pilot valve. Pilot valve. Let's see. I'm going to give it 3 positions. It really has a lot more than that, right? Because it's infinitely variable in all different types. But it has 3 main positions. So moves up and down. Up and down. To one of 3 positions. To one of 3 positions. So 1. It's either going to open passages from the pump to prop, or it is going to open passages to drain the prop. It's really not plural, it's like one open passage from prop to drain oil, or block all passages. Wow, did I get wordy? And as we looked at yesterday, we can repeat this and look at it. It's going to do one of 3 things. Either, this is the propeller line, so from prop to drain oil, or from pump to prop, or on speed, which blocks all passages. So it's neither going from the pump to the prop or the prop to drain. So I wrote, I'm not going to tell you this, I have in my notes, the oil route. So where does the oil come from? Well, this is really more, I think, of an engine thing, but from the accessory case-mounted pad, the governor uses an external line to the front of the crankcase. We talked about that the other day. So Lycoming is going to run an external line all the way up forward, and then it's going to go through the crankcase to the front main bearing on a Lycoming, which has a section on it which lines up with a hole that goes through the center of the crankshaft and out the center of the crankshaft to the propeller. All right, or if it's a Lycoming, if it's a Continental, then it would be oil passages are just drilled on the case. So it goes from the case, you can't see it, through the pump, back out into the case, to the oil transfer collar, crankshaft, and then out. Ooh, that was like 20 minutes of writing I just covered there.
Yeah, you said yesterday you prefer the one without the external line.
Yeah, it's one less thing to break. Yeah. I did make a note that both Continental and Lycoming have a service bulletin on converting fixed pitch to constant speed. So if you wanted to convert your engine. All right.
And tell you.
On top of the pilot valve, actually on top of the flyweights, is the speeder spring. Why, without the speeder spring, we wouldn't have much movement. So when the pilot operates the pilot-controlled lever in the cockpit, all it is doing is either putting pressure on the spring or releasing pressure on the spring. So in this particular case right here, if the pilot should be they have it pulls back, so pulls back, it is going to raise this. The flyweights are right now in equilibrium, but pull back, it should go into Overspeed because I want it to get more pitch. It's going to slow the engine down. And that's what it is. Pull the prop back, slow the engine down. Pull it back, releases pressure on the speeder spring. Flyweights were in equilibrium. They go back. It's going to lift up the pilot valve. Lift up the pilot valve. And this is one way it could do it. It could drain oil off from the prop. This would be a counterweighted. And then it's going to go to a higher pitch. Follow? Yes.
That drain is into the drive gear cavity of the accessory case, or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So in your particular instance, oops. There we go. That's what it's going to look like on the back of a Lycoming. So here's that oil line going forward. By the way, what kind of fitting do we have there?
Steel.
Mm-mm. That one is. Those two are blue, so they are.
That's blue?
Is that blue?
Can't tell it's blue.
You know what? It looks silver, so it's probably steel. It's silver, I think. All right, but oil pressure. Oh, from the engine. I believe it comes this way, and then into the pump, and then that way, and then if it drains, I think it goes to that hole right there. Yeah. So engine oil from here into the pump. From the pump, if it's going to the out, it's going to go through this line right there.
The picture on the left,
Other one?
is that an adapter from the
That is.
plane on the accessory case?
Yes, you can see it right here. How there's the accessory case, there's a gasket, then there's an adapter. So oil to prop is going to go that way. Oil from prop just comes back this way. Drains out of here, and I believe it's that hole right there. Okay. So let me see. Forget where I was.
Top of flyweight
Yep.
speeder spring.
Yep. There we go. We're talking about this. So one more time. We are in equilibrium. Pull the prop control back. It's always going to be this, no matter what. Pull the prop control back. I want to go to a low RPM, which is a higher pitch. That's all airplanes unless they're built backwards. That's where it's going to be. And so to go to a lower pitch, we have to, I'm sorry, pull it back, low RPM, higher pitch. So to go to a higher pitch, we're always going to be telling the governor that you are over speed condition. Otherwise, it's not going to move the pilot valve. So take pressure off the speeder spring. Flyweights are going to go out, indicating that it is in a overspeed condition. The prop will increase its angle, slowing down the engine, bringing the flyweights into equilibrium. That's always going to be the case. Now, what happens down here will change depending on whether or not it's got counterweights or it doesn't have counterweights. So they'll change the pilot valve to remix it. So in this particular case, we've said pull back on the prop control. It goes higher, low RPM. Low RPM. So to slow it down, it's got to get more pitch. So more pitch, we'll go with this picture here. To get more pitch, it is going to send oil to the prop to go into a lower pitch. Follow? Therefore, what makes it go into a... Did I say that right?
What makes it go?
I did say how it goes to a higher pitch, right? Lower RPM? Okay, make sure I said it good. What makes it go to a low pitch? What force? In this case, be centrifugal. So if oil pressure makes it go high pitch, then you know that centrifugal force has to make it go back the other way. So that means that if we're sending the oil to the prop to go to a high pitch, it's got to be non-counterweighted. Non-counterweighted. And then to go back to low pitch, it's got to be Centrifugal. Now, if this was that prop right there off a twin with counterweights, this would be the opposite. We would take this picture part up here where flyweights go out. It lifts up the pilot valve and does this. It would drain oil. So it would lift up the pilot valve. So we take this one, lifts it, it lifts up the pilot valve, and the pilot valve goes up. It drains the oil off. And when it drained the oil off, centrifugal twisting force acts upon the counterweights and drives it towards higher pitch. That's really confusing, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's either or. So, okay. Speeder spring. Speeder spring applies spring pressure to the flyweights. Applies spring pressure to flyweights. Once again, I wrote way too much. Without spring pressure, the flyweights would move outward and lift the pilot valve at the slightest amount of RPM. So obviously, you got a speeder spring to balance it out. So I could write that; it would make more sense. Flyweight. Centrifugal force and spring pressure. I want to say something about equilibrium.
Balances.
Yeah, balance. Balance at an on-speed condition. On-speed condition. They'll be in balance. Let's see. Let's do this one. If speeder spring broke, the governor would default to what condition? On speed, under speed, over speed. Over speed. There's nothing to balance counterweights. So they just brakes and the counterweights just fly right out. So it default to an overspeed. So if it's in an overspeed, what's prop going to do? No, it doesn't depend. Increase pitch. No matter what it is. You lose a speed or spring, go to the overspeed condition, and the prop's just going to go to overspeed. Increase pitch. So the cockpit control. Cockpit control is attached to speeder spring. And varies the tension. Or compression. Varies. I like that. Tension, we'll put compression. Will be like technical and whatnot. So more compression equals on speed, over speed, under speed. Under speed. So let's go under speed, which is says under speed. So is that going to be increase or decrease pitch? Decrease. And is that going to increase or decrease RPM? Increase RPM. There we go. Less compression. This one's easier because you just have to say the opposite. Equals overspeed, so less compression. They went that way, so we're in an overspeed condition. If we're in an overspeed condition, we must increase pitch, which is going to lower RPM. Told you it was much easier, this one. You that, just getting really smart. Probably the second one. All right. I don't think there's a lot more I can say about a governor because there's really not a lot more to it. Oh, there was a slide here I remember, though, that I didn't say much about. All right, so we got the gasket. By the way, that gasket, picture of the gasket. No. Got that mesh gasket right there. It's actually kind of has some dimension to it. So that little mesh screen sits up like that. This mesh screen right here. It's actually raised. And so you gotta make sure you put it on the right way. If there's no indent on the adapter, which there's not, then there must be an indent inside of the governor. So make sure you put it on the right way. But the nice thing is, if you really, really screw up, they did make it somewhat idiot resistant. Notice that there's a hole there in the engine, and there's no hole here in the engine, but these nice folks put a hole on both sides because they know people. And I guarantee you it wasn't always that way.
Why is that just another filter? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, catch stuff from going through the governor and then off to the prop. You'll figure this out eventually, but the direction of rotation for the governor, because you have to make it for engines that may end up driving it clockwise and some counterclockwise. So the direction of rotation is when viewed from the drive end of the what? The governor. So you may have to rotate it the other way around, depending on which way. That's what they're indicating here. Here's the drive pad. Well, maybe it goes clockwise, maybe it goes counterclockwise. Well, how do you change the direction? And the way they write it in the book is so confusing because to me, this is just me, the first thing you think of is which way? I do too. I think of clockwise as being the correct thing. So to me, I always like to think A equals clockwise and then B equals counterclockwise or anti-clockwise if you like. So I like to think of things that way. The first thing you think of is clockwise, A. But in this particular case, if you put the plugs in the B hole, it is clockwise. If you put the plugs in the A hole, it is counterclockwise. I said A hole. So I think of it this way. If the A hole is open, it must be turning clockwise. And if the B hole is open, it must be counterclockwise. And then that made more sense to me. Like, oh, I can remember that now. So, see, because this is clockwise, plug B, and counterclockwise, plug A. So I was correct. So I say A open is counterclockwise and B open is counterclockwise. I'm like, oh, that makes more sense to me. What happens if you put one plug in A and one plug in B? Let me know if you're going to do it. Oh, I do have more pictures of this. I should move those around a little bit. There we go. So there's the little back of the governor right here that has that gasket. And this is why I don't sit in line with the propeller on airplanes. And we already talked about that airplane up in Napa. And that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Future.
It says this is all, but it's not because my notes clearly aren't. And these are all slides that I said, oh, I don't really need them because these are very confusing to go through. So I moved those out, but rather than throw them away, I left them there. All right, discard that. So what do we want to talk about? I know what I want to talk about now. We're going to move into props because that's in my notes this week too. So I know I'm right on time. All right. But apparently I'm out of PowerPoint stuff. Oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So the first prop we want to talk about this week, and we'll talk about the other ones next week, is this particular prop right here. Do you remember this particular prop? And what was that?
The two position.
The two-position Hamilton standard propeller. And what kind of bolts are these right here?
Those are the Welch bolts.
Welch bolts, because you can see right, well, I can see it.
There's a plug.
There's a plug right there. And what's inside of those? Not steel wool. Lead wool. All right. And you know what's missing from this? It's not safety. There should be a pin in here, and there should be a cotter pin right there. So, all right. And when we shut this down, we shut it down in which position? High. Why do we do that?
To protect the cylinder.
Look how pretty that piston is. This is the cylinder. Piston goes inside. So, so look how pretty that is. So it's going to come all the way back. So what position is this in now? Looks like low pitch to me. Counterweights are kind of as far forward. They're going to roll back later. So, all right. So let's talk about this prop. But this is no longer the Hamilton Standard two-position propeller. It is now a constant speed Hamilton Standard counterweighted. So it may or may not go on a twin-engine aircraft. Probably not, because it's not feathering. So I guess it would go on a single-engine aircraft. Even though it's counterweighted, because things can be antiques and done differently. So when I'm talking mostly about counterweighted props, I'm really talking more about them on twins. It's more of the modern style. But we're talking about antiques here, so it's kind of an anything goes sort of a thing. So, all right. On any constant speed propeller, we start off with the takeoff roll down the runway in low pitch, high RPM. If not, you've got a very low RPM and a very high manifold pressure, and that is a bad combination. So, all right, so in starting position, and in landing we also have it in high RPM, low pitch, in case we have to do a go around. You mash that throttle forward, you're all set to go. All right. I don't know if I want to follow my notes. So, using the same propeller, and we just add a governor, because before, what did we have? Just had, well, we had in the two-position Hamilton Standard, did we have a governor?
No.
We had a two-position valve. It's on this test, by the way. Oil pressure to prop, oil pressure from prop. And all it was just engine oil pressure. So we're talking what? 70, 80 pounds, 60 pounds? That's all we've got. So, and there's no way to control it. It's either going to slam all the way one way or slam all the way the other way. Constant speed prop's got to find that kind of middle ground. It's got to hold it. Because as we're flying the aircraft, and we may pull back a little bit or push forward a little bit, changing pitch a little bit, doing turns and stuff, it's got to lock in at that RPM. Well, it won't lock in on the RPM on the two position. It's just going to go high pitch, low pitch. That's it. And then you're going to get what you get. So it'd be just like a fixed pitch propeller. It's just fixed at low pitch or it's fixed at high pitch. That's what it's going to do. So now we're going to take a look at what happens. We take that prop, which you're kind of familiar with, and we're just going to add a governor to it. Now the prop has some brains to it. And what we're going to do, so I was smart on this one. I wrote a bunch of notes because I hate this picture so bad because we're still doing the same thing. Error shows direction prop needs to move to achieve on-speed condition to the dotted line. I think it says dotted line. I don't see a dotted line right there. Okay. So what we're showing here is this prop now is in the overspeed condition. So it is in high or low pitch? Low pitch, right, which is the
high RPM.
All right, high RPM. Man, you guys are smart. Let's see, what did I write here? In the low pitch, high RPM position, more of the pistons exposed to the element. So that is true. It's way out here. So this is way out here. So we have a governor that is operating. And let's just say we have taken off and we had it in low pitch, high RPM position. And we took off and we're climbing and we level off and we still have it in the low pitch, high RPM position. At this point, I've leveled off. I've pulled back the manifold pressure, which is also called the throttle to a reasonable amount. And now I'm going to reach over and I'm going to pull back the blue knob. And I am going to increase or decrease speed or spring pressure. I got to think this one through now. Decrease the speed or spring because we want the flyweights to go over speed. And so now we're saying, I know you've been going that speed for a long time now, but suddenly engine is too fast because I pulled back on the blue knob, decreased speed or spring pressure, said I'm over speed. So the governor is now going to do something with the prop. And so it's up to us to figure out what that something is because it's counterweighted and we want it to go into a higher pitch. Centrifugal twisting force is going to, not that prop, but might as well. Centrifugal twisting force is going to increase pitch. Therefore, we need to drain off oil. Well, let's see if I'm right here. So, I can't read that. So, this piston has to move back. So, if it's got to move back, we got to get rid of the oil. So, if we got to get rid of the oil, then it's, and you can see by the arrows, I guess that's my best indication. The arrows are pointing up, up, up. The pilot valve has been lifted, aligning passageway to allow oil to drain out of here. Oh, I can actually barely see that. You can turn the lights off for just a second. You can see the colored light blue. There you go. See, it's light blue, so it's draining off right there. All right. Everybody follow that? Or one more time? One more time from the top. We have climbed up, and when we were climbing, the prop is in the forward position, high RPM, low pitch. By the way, on the instrument panel, it's just high RPM, low RPM. So high RPM, low pitch position, flat-ish. We climb, level off. It's still going to be, it'll be right up there at red line. Reach over, pull back the manifold, because that's what we do first. What happens to the RPM when I pull back manifold? Nothing. Manifold just goes down. RPM stays the same. Reach over, pull back on the blue knob, which is going to lower RPM. Lower RPM, so that means that the speeder spring lost tension. The flyweights move out. Says it's in an overspeed, lifts up the pilot valve. Because it's counterweighted, when it lifts the pilot valve, it is going to bleed off oil because the counterweights is what's going to take it into a higher pitch. So bleed off some oil, counterweights, centrifugal twisting force moves that blade into a higher blade angle, goes towards a dotted line. The engine slows down and the flyweights come into equilibrium. As they come into equilibrium, it's going to drop the pilot valve, blocking off each one of these passageways. Maybe there's a picture. I don't know. Nope. There is no picture. Blocking off all passageways. Nothing moves. So what happens to all this oil that this oil pump's pumping? Because it's a constant displacement pump, and a pump's got to pump. So what happens to that oil? It just goes back to the inlet side of the pump via a pressure relief valve that is not shown on here, but basically it pumps it through here and just kind of it just goes around. It doesn't show it, but it goes right back around the pump. How hot does this thing get?
Very.
Yeah, you guys.
Got pretty hot.
Could you hold on to it? It was not comfortable, was it?
Not long, but
Yeah, you could touch it, you could hold it, but you didn't want to hang on to it. And we didn't run it more than, 5 minutes?
not even that.
Yeah, that's how hot it got. All right. But now, let's change it around. I've leveled off. I've been flying for a while, but clouds are in front of me. I got to go over the clouds, so we got to increase things. So I'm going to reach over. First thing I'm going to do is push in the... Nope. High manifold, low RPM is not a good thing. So first thing I want to raise is RPM. So I reach over and I push my blue knob forward. Push the blue knob forward. I'm going to increase tension on the flyweights. Flyweights are going to move in. It's going to drop the pilot valve. So I'm in a underspeed condition. drop the pilot valve. When I drop the pilot valve, it's going to open up a passageway that is going to allow this high pressure from this particular pump to go over to the prop, into the crankshaft, out through the center of the crankshaft to the hub up here. It is going to fill this area up, which it has not yet, and start to push this dome out, which is going to bring it into a lower pitch, overcoming the centrifugal twisting force of the counterweights. Yes, we did it. Well, I did it. Good? All right, we already talked about the A-holes and that. All right. So as we go through this stuff, I'm going to try and do a little thing here. I don't want you to get real hung up on, okay, that's the Hamilton standard counterweight versus the Macaulay this or something like that. It really just comes down to some key points on here. It doesn't matter that I called it a Hamilton standard, but the propeller has counterweights. So, does it have counterweights? Yes. So what moves the prop to low pitch? It has counterweights. Therefore, oil pressure moves it to low pitch. What moves prop to high pitch? Counterweights. And this one particular one has a spring in it. So, but I'm not going to hold you to that necessarily. If you can learn oil pressure and counterweights and which way they go, you're fantastic. Let's see. I have to make sure everything's correct. So, increase speed or spring pressure. What happens when you increase the speed or spring pressure? It goes under speed, oil to prop to decrease pitch. Is that correct? Increase the speed or spring pressure. It goes to underspeed. If you go to underspeed, you need oil pressure to go to low pitch. It says that right over here, oil pressure to low pitch. So oil to prop to decrease pitch. Decrease the speed or spring pressure. That is overspeed. Drain oil to increase pitch. There we go. Make sense? All right. Are you writing notes? Probably want me to do it. All right. We'll do this. Operation. We'll call it the Hamilton standard. Hamilton standard. No longer two position. So in starting. Takeoff and landing. And that's going to be, honestly, that's the way it is for all props. Although it's kind of a lie in this one because in starting, where are we supposed to shut this one down? Yeah. So I don't own one of these. I don't know, honestly, if I would assume people are doing it with their prop. Probably not everybody. But otherwise, all props, you really want to start it, take off, and landing is in the high RPM, low pitch position. I don't remember, was I talking to you guys or you guys? I talked about, for maintenance purposes, during annuals and such, we do have to check feathering.
We were talking about
Yeah, okay, so we do have to check feathering. And there are times we'll shut the prop down in feather, or shut the engine down in feather. To make sure that it goes all the way to feather, because it's really kind of hard on the engine. You don't want to go to feather and let it run, because it's, man, the manifold pressure gets pretty nasty. So you'll shut it down in feather. Starting a piston engine in feather is an experience. It's really hard on the starter. It doesn't like to do it, and when it does start, you're like, whoa, something is definitely wrong. And then you just kind of feel the airplane shake, and it kind of just suddenly you'll hear the pitch change in it. And as the oil pressure builds up and it brings it into low pitch and everything, that sounds much, much better. Almost feels like it was missing on a couple cylinders there for a minute. So you do have to do it, but It's not a good thing to do. Let me see. So prop is in. Prop control is forward, which is high RPM, because that's what it says in the cockpit. So speeder spring pressure is high or low?
High.
And we want it in high RPM, which is in a, you got to go faster, you got to go faster. So we're going to go under speed. So speeder spring pressure high. And the fly weights would be in a under speed condition. In this particular prop, what does it do with the oil? Is it going to add oil or decrease oil?
Add oil.
Going to add oil. Add oil to keep it low. So that is correct. This will put sends oil to prop. In this particular one. In cruise, we are going to pull back prop lever, prop / RPM to, what I'll put, to desired RPM. Desired lower RPM. Going to pull it back. That is going to add or
Decrease spring pressure.
decrease. This decreases speed or spring. And decrease, it will go to overspeed. Overspeed, and this will drain or add oil. Drain. Drain oil from prop. Let's see. This is almost the same thing. So I'm flying along, got it my cruise, and would you look at that down there? I'm flying over, I don't know, flying over Rawhide out there. I just want to see who laughed it over.
Actually, had called to respond out there.
Was that?
When I was working with the sheriff's department out in Wilton, I called out there and responded.
Do you not know what Rawhide is? Rawhide's our local nudist ranch. And it just so happens that if you draw a straight line from, what's the airport? Rancho Murrieta to Clarksburg where I worked, an exact straight line, it goes right over it. So that's how I could always find it. Why is everybody wearing
And the canal goes right next to
the canal, and there's a big lake? I've never flown over it, but I've heard on YouTube. Yeah.
at an altitude above 500 feet.
I'm always way above. I'm like, yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, I'm all over it.
Yeah. You look at it like, is that like a prison? Because everybody's wearing the same colored jumpsuits. That's about all you could tell.
And most of them are over 70.
Oh, really? So, anyway. Yeah, so anyway, you're flying along, you look at, hey, look at that, we're over Rawhide. I'm going to, go down. So without changing any controls, you push them forward to get down there to your 500 feet above, because that's the minimum safe altitude you're allowed to fly over anything out in the boonies. So what's going to happen? Push forward.
It's going to go into overspeed.
It is, because you started to dive down. Not only are you going to have less, I guess, I don't know, I'll say tension on the engine, but you're definitely going to go down, which would tend to cause the airspeed to increase, acting against the propeller, which is going to cause the propeller to start to turn faster. Because if you think about with this prop here, it's what would happen. Engine RPM is going to increase, but not on this plane. What's going to happen? It's going to say, well, it's starting to speed up. It's going to go into overspeed. So if it's going to go into overspeed, it's going to lift up the pilot valve all on its own. You didn't touch anything. It's going to fight against that speeder spring because it's going faster. Lift up the pilot valve and drain oil from the prop, allowing the counterweights, centrifugal force to increase the pitch. So the RPM will stay locked right in. What happens to airspeed? All goes up real nice. Real nice. Okay. So overspeed, we got that. Let me see. On speed. So obviously, well, we can cruise for on speed. I didn't write that. It's like OnStar. On speed, which would look just like this. Then pilot valve blocks oil to and from prop. And the oil in the governor recirculates. Recirculates. Through the bypass. Through pressure bypass. Or actually, it's a pressure relief. Be a better term for it. And it just sits there going around, around, around. But like I said, I don't really think it does that very much because there's leakage going between the transfer collar and bearings to the crankshaft. So you're going to get some leakage. And while I'm on that specific subject of this leakage, it is entirely possible that somebody could complain, a pilot perhaps, that their prop hunts. It doesn't lock in. It's constantly moving and not doing what you want it to do. What would be some things that could cause that now that we've talked about all of this stuff? Sludge is a big, big deal. Front of the crankshaft is a centrifuge. It separates out all of that lead deposits from the oil and packs it into the front of the crankshaft. Remember, there's ADs and service bulletins on Lycomings for that because that sludge traps moisture between the sludge and the crankshaft inside wall and pits it, corrodes it, and the pits go all the way through until the crankshaft, you get a crankshaft separation light up front comes off. So there is an AD. So that can pack full of sludge, creating a smaller opening so that the prop oil does not actually get out there like it's supposed to. So whenever you pull a prop off, I desludge them. Not a fun job, but there it is. All right, so we could have sludge build up, very common. What else could we have?
Weak speeder spring.
Weak speeder spring would actually do that. Yep. We could maybe have a plugged gasket here. That would be really bad because that means you got metal coming out of somewhere. But what about your transfer collar and bearing to crankshaft wear? If the prop can't keep up with the space between the transfer collar or bearings and the crankshaft, you're going to have problems. So there is a way to test that. And what you do is you get an adapter plate that looks just like this. And for the engines where it's mounted on the crankcase. And we actually, it's a plate that would look like this with one fitting that goes into, and you could actually do it through this line right here. We'll hook up a differential compression gauge, just like we're doing a cylinder compression. You just hook it up the oil line, inboard oil line. And there's a service instruction tells you how many PSI to put in and what it should be.
And then that'll tell you if the gears are more, you said?
Crankshaft to bearings.
Crankshaft and bearings.
So we're looking for a leak. So
Leaks, gotcha.
I don't remember if I have the. I don't think I wrote it down what it is, but let's just say you're supposed to put 60 psi in there. Well, it says 20. What does that tell you?
Yeah, weight between the crankshaft and bearings.
Yeah, the space is too big,
Yes.
and governor can't keep up with that. So there's tolerances I'll give you with that. All right. We got that. We got that. We got that. On speed, under speed. We did that. Oh, we can do that. Okay, so we did the overspeed, dove down. Take a look at the nudies down there. Now we got to get back to where we're going. So we climb back. So we just pull back on the stick. What happens?
Underspeed condition.
Underspeed. It's going to drop the pilot valve down. Go into underspeed. So we got to go to a lower pitch. What's going to drive it to lower pitch?
Oil pressure.
Oil pressure. So now it's going to send oil pressure out to the prop. The prop is going to flatten out, and as it flattens out, speeder springs come in. Go to on speed, lock in the oil. There we go. No, I just wrote propeller governor oil line leak check. Yeah, I did that. Okay. Today's Wednesday. I'm like way ahead of myself. Keep going with it. That is good. That is good. All right. Let's do a little review. We'll do that. We'll do later. We'll just keep moving forward. Break time.